So for the last while now, a lot of people have been asking who is the strongest Avenger or who's the strongest person in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Is it Captain Marvel or is it Thor? Well, now that Captain Marvel's out, that seems to be something that a lot of people are asking and a lot of people are talking about. So I'm gonna kind of discuss if I think Captain Marvel's more powerful or if I think Thor is more powerful. If I think Captain Marvel's stronger or Thor's stronger. Um, so yeah, and there's going to be spoilers for Captain Marvel because I kind of need to discuss what happens in that movie when talking about it. But Feige has said this: Captain Marvel is the most powerful character we've introduced. Her powers are off the charts, and when she's introduced, she will be by far the most powerful character we've ever had. I believe Feige said that to Entertainment Weekly back in September ish. But yeah, we're constantly being told by everyone that Captain Marvel is not just the strongest Avenger, but the strongest character in the MCU. All the people working on the movie have said it. Brie Larson has said it. Um, some of the people from the Avengers movie have said it. Just everyone's talking about this, but we haven't exactly seen yet if she is that powerful. It's just people constantly telling us she's powerful without showing it, and I feel like we need to see her be that powerful. And well, the reason I'm using Thor and not making this comparison with Doctor Strange or Scarlet Witch, for example, is because it's hard trying to pinpoint exactly what Scarlet Witch or Doctor Strange are capable of. It's easy with Carol because her powers are generally cosmic and it's we see what she's capable of. Doctor Strange, Scarlet Witch, the fact that they're magic, it's kind of hard to be like, oh, this that Doctor Strange can do would beat, say, Thor if he does this. It's hard because they're so two vastly different things that it's hard to kind of talk about them together. And when talking about this, I'm going to include both how powerful and how strong they are together, because while how powerful and how strong do mean two different things, they're often discussed as one and the same. But in Captain Marvel, we didn't really see Carol do anything comparable to the feats Thor has. Um, During the movie, for most of the movie, she doesn't have her full powers unlocked. Then the third act, she kind of starts realizing how to use her powers properly, and she does some pretty cool things, like smashing through all of the Kree ships and basically wrecking shit, like pretty spectacularly. But that said, even though that was so cool, I don't think that is anywhere comparable to the feats that Thor has done or some of those characters. Maybe in her sequel or in Avengers Endgame, we'll see her full power, especially since the Russos have talked a little bit about how they think that they've found a great way to utilize Captain Marvel's powers. And I do have faith in them because they made Thor look so badass in Endgame. Like, Thor looked pretty powerful in Ragnarok, but in Endgame, he was otherworldly powerful. He was by far the most powerful thing we'd seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe up until that point in Endgame. So it's possible they found out how to do a similar thing with Captain Marvel, and they're going to make her more powerful than Thor. Maybe she'll do something that'll be more powerful than Thor. So maybe in Avengers Endgame, we'll see her full power and see everything we've been hearing about. But at the moment, I want to go off what we've seen rather than what we've heard. In terms of raw strength, I think it's pretty unarguable that Thor is stronger. And by default, I would say that both Hulk and Thanos are also stronger. As a matter of fact, I think it's likely, if we're just using raw strength, that Thanos is the strongest being in the Marvel Cinematic Universe at this moment. Thor just barely beat Hulk in his fight on Sakaar, and then Thanos proceeded to beat Hulk with ease at the beginning of Infinity War, with just his strength. Like, that was just a straight up punching match. Although, to be fair, it's kind of iffy if he's anywhere near that strong without the Infinity Gauntlet. I think Thanos is pretty strong without the Gauntlet, but I think with the Gauntlet, he is unmatched in terms of, like, Thor and Hulk and all of that. Especially since we saw him pick up Thor and kind of squeeze his head with ease as well in the beginning scene of Infinity War. I think outside of raw strength, Thor is also, by a huge margin, more indestructible than Carol, at least what we've seen so far. I think he's also, by a huge margin, more indestructible than Hulk. Like, let's not forget that in Infinity War, we saw Thor take the energy of a dying star to his back and survive. It was actually his back and his chest, I believe, because it was coming from both sides with the Forge as well. So, that's pretty crazy. Thor's Asgardian and godlike nature was most likely what stopped him from being vaporized in that. He's not just a normal Asgardian, he's a godly Asgardian. This is also the biggest display of clear power that we've seen from anyone in the MCU, and despite Feige's words, unless we see Carol do something comparable to that in Endgame, I still think Thor is the bigger powerhouse. Besides, we can't forget that despite her abilities, Carol is still just a human with Kree blood. It's not even like she's half human, half Kree. She's just a human with Kree blood. I think something akin to a dying star would just completely pulverize her. In the comics, and even briefly in her solo movie, especially with her absorbing the power of the Tesseract, we get hints about Carol's energy absorption power. It's possible she could conceivably survive the star by absorbing all of the energy, but unless we see her do something comparable, I think it's just a theory at this point about how powerful her energy absorption really is. And while most people understandably look to the comics for explanations when it comes to things like this, and I normally do too, I normally read some comics and whatever to kind of get a good look at these characters, but I think this is one of the times when the comics can't really help. The MCU changes so much when it comes to the movies that the comics can't really help us. Like, out of all of the different comic book universes out there, like and live action universe, like the Arrowverse, the DCU universe, the DCEU, the X-Men Fox universe, all that kind of stuff, I think that the MCU is by far the one that changes things from the comics the most, pretty regularly. Pretty much no storyline they've adapted is anywhere close to how it is in the comics. But that's not a bad thing either, because the MCU knows how to make them well. It knows how to not do the storylines badly. It's weird because they definitely take huge deviations from the comics pretty regularly. I don't even think there's any MCU movie that is exactly or even very similar to the comics. For example, Vision and Scarlet Witch are two of Marvel Comics' absolute powerhouses and they're as big a part of the Avengers as, say, Iron Man or Captain America. But in the movies, both Scarlet Witch and Vision have been relegated to side roles. They've been so underutilized that they're actually getting a TV show rather than being more used in the movies. They've never been allowed to reach their full potential yet, and they've just kind of been thrown aside in favor of less important characters like Black Widow or Hulk, which is a little annoying. For reasons like this, I think it's better to just use what we know from the MCU itself to talk about things like this. Again, most of what I said about the future going forward is hypothetical. We can't forget that there will have been a 20-year gap between Endgame and Captain Marvel. Carol didn't have a full grasp on her powers at the end of her own movie. She had just unlocked a lot of her powers and thus was probably just swinging around seeing what she could do and how powerful she could get. So after 20 years of training her powers and honing them, and being off in space fighting more Kree and stuff like that, and learning new powers as well probably, and just becoming more powerful in general, I think it's possible and very likely that her powers have increased by an insane amount, probably to put her in very close proximity to Thor as the true strongest character of the MCU. But with this said, I'll be honest, I personally think Thor is pretty clearly the stronger and more powerful character in this universe. Until we see something to the contrary, and I don't mean someone who is working on the movie saying she's stronger. No, it needs to be something. It needs to be seeing or hearing something inside one of the movies, like hearing that Carol did something at some point that was crazy strong, which I would hate, but it's canon, so I'd accept it. Or just seeing her do something comparable to taking the full force of a dying star. Then maybe we can start talking about how she's more powerful than Thor. And personally, I feel like Feige saying Captain Marvel is stronger is just because of how important and big the character is going forward. I know considering Feige oversees all of this, his word should be indisputable, but I'm a little iffy on how powerful they actually will make Carol look. So far, I think that Thor is still stronger than Captain Marvel, despite what Feige says. Unless we see something to the contrary, I'm just going to keep thinking Thor is more powerful, more stronger. But yeah, what do you think? Do you think Captain Marvel's stronger? Do you think Thor is stronger? Who would you like to be stronger? And maybe in Avengers Endgame, we'll see her do something that's 20 times as big a deal as taking the force of a dying star. But Endgame is in just over a month, and we'll get the answer to a lot of these questions then. So yeah, have a great day.